Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and however you choose to identify yourself. If you can see my face and hear my voice, you know it can mean only one thing. That's right. It is time once again for the Too Many Guys Soccer Show. I am your host, Mike, and I'm joined by my faithful partner in all things podcasting, producer Stead. How goes it? I know you had a very interesting weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I can say confidently that all is well. All is well. Sleep was not on the forefront, but all is well. But I will say at the start of the show, please, if you want to get in touch with us, email us at toomanyguyssoccershow@gmail.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and the like button if you want to hear more content. Also, please leave a comment if you will, in any sense. We get so few of them that I've commented on every one that we receive, which has been about 6. So go ahead and communicate with us.
Most of the comments tell us how much we suck.
That's right. That's right. And I tell them, thank you so much for listening. Tell your friends.
Yes, we know we suck and we know we do.
This makes the show so much fun.
We got a packed show coming up. We're going to be joined in a little bit by our good friend Celtic Cam because, yeah, this is a soccer show. And our first guest, we're going to talk rugby. Because you know that it is the final weekend of one of our favorite international tournaments.
Absolutely.
No disrespect to the Gold Cup, no disrespect to the World Cup or the Euros or the Champions League or the Europa League or the Premier League or any tournament. But I've got to say, and you and I both agree on this, that one of our favorite tournaments every year to watch is the Six Nations.
Absolutely. For an annual tournament. Let me say what I like most about this as an annual tournament, because, as an annual tournament, they're competing with things much more like maybe playoffs or the NCAA basketball tournaments and everything like that. What I love so much about this tournament, it's the same 6 teams every time. It's the same 6 teams.
It seems to change just a little bit.
Absolutely.
Every year.
Absolutely.
Teams rise, they fall. You get surprises. Last year, France finally got over the hump. A couple of years ago, Wales kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, and won that. That was a great tournament they won too. That was fantastic.
Italy's been improving. So, it's a great tournament to watch. It takes place over about, 7 weeks and starts in late January, early February, and goes until March. And it just happens that we've got probably one of the better sports weekends that you can find in a calendar year coming up. We've got, the Champions League, the Europa League, and the Europa Conference League this week. But then Thursday, if the Six Nations is my favorite one annual tournament, the NCAA tournament is like 1A.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
There are a few things in sports that are as much fun as that first weekend of the tournament.
Yep.
The first day when you're watching basketball and nobody's productive anywhere because basketball is on from 12 hours.
Yeah, it's on from noon to midnight. Absolutely. Yeah, my boss has already said, just so you guys know, we're working till about 11:30. That's about it.
So we have parent-teacher conferences, and I'm trying to figure out how much to lean into my brand, and just while the conferences are going on, have the tournament on the projecting screen on my classroom. Just kind of leave it there.
I'm telling you this. You'll be surprised how many parents will actually be appreciative that it's on and how unproductive those conferences will be. You're going to sit there and go, yeah, they're fine. How much time you got left? 10 minutes? You'll get to the end of the first half. Sit down. I got some chips over there if you want.
Yeah, I'm really, really toying with the idea. It's hard not to. By the way, Friday is also St. Patrick's Day. I don't know how you feel about that out there. It runs the gamut from I'm so super excited to, it's amateur hour. And you have that rare confluence of events where St. Patrick's Day falls exactly on the same day as the second day of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. Yep. And
Needless
the final
to say,
day
I
of Six
probably
Nations.
doubt that I will be going out, but 1 o'clock Saturday. Well, the games actually start at 8:45, but 1 o'clock Saturday.
Mhm.
Ireland, amongst other things going on this weekend, because we still have the Premier League, we still have the Bundesliga. Manchester United have a big game on Thursday.
Mhm.
1 o'clock, starting at early in the morning. We have the final round of the Six Nations.
Mhm.
Scotland, Italy, Wales, France, and then the big one coming from Dublin, Ireland and England. I kind of already know where I'm going to be. I already made the plans.
Yes, I am joining, unless I have another home disaster. I won't say disaster, but home
I would strongly
issue.
suggest that if you are going to join me, you get there early.
I'm gonna try to get there as early as possible.
Well, I'm
Early as
not.
possible.
I'm going to get there around noon.
Yeah,
But
I'm gonna try to get there a
I
little
don't
earlier
think
than
that I
that,
can
but
get there before the. I think the second game is at 11 or something like that. I don't think that I could sustain 2 full rugby games.
no. Well, no. The game you want to see starts at 1. So
Yeah.
at least the venue that you're discussing. Yeah, you want to start at 1. But it would be great to get there to catch the end of the France-Wales game, because that does carry some weight. If France wins that game, okay,
Yeah.
there's something to play for here. So let's
If they win,
but
if they get it, if they win and
mhm,
they get a bonus point, then it's all on Ireland.
it's all in Ireland. Yep, ball's in your court. And the way Wales has been playing this tournament, it's entirely possible for France to get that bonus point, especially after the way they drubbed England last week.
It's entirely possible for France to get that bonus point the way Wales has been playing in the first half.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're definitely
It's
right about that.
possible for France to get the bonus point in the first half playing with 13 or 14 guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Warren
Absolutely.
Gatlin, the coach of Wales, has an immense job in front of him,
Yeah.
especially getting this team ready for the World Cup.
It's sad though that I don't know. It's, I guess it's not sad. And we'll say this more when Cam gets here, but I didn't want Italy to lose that game.
No, I thought that they have played
and
so
they
well
played
this year.
They looked good in the game. It's
They
almost
just
like you
gave
just
up
kind of
too much too early
yeah.
to Wales, and they were on the back foot from the first couple of minutes of the game, and they
Right.
never were able to fully get back into it and to make
Yeah,
it a
I was
competitive.
hoping they could avoid that wooden spoon this year. But I'll say this, at least from a support standpoint, the appreciation for the way Italy's playing is evident throughout all the broadcasts that we have available to us. Italy is showing they belong. And
Mhm.
you're hearing, I mean, even if they haven't won, but you're still hearing every broadcast team is really talking about how well they're playing, and how this is a team that's really just like this tournament in particular has just had some bad luck, gotten behind early, made some, but they're playing. They took a huge step forward in their development, and they're showing that if they can just keep going, this could be a team that you don't want to play if you're actually up for the title and you're on game 4 or 5. You know what I mean? This is a team that'll beat you because they haven't been.
And for so long, it was the possibility was floated around. Should we drop them?
Mm-hmm.
Should we include South Africa?
Yeah, they were talking about the Republic of Georgia, who's really been bigging up
And
their.
I was going to bring them up.
Yeah.
Should they include the Republic of Georgia? Should they make it, so that the second tier tournament, the European Rugby Cup winners qualify for the Six Nations?
Right.
Should something be done, because Italy had been so epically horrendous over the last almost decade. And this year, yeah, they may well and probably will end up with the wooden spoon. But at the same time, no, they picked up a point. If we're being real honest, the two top teams in the tournament, Italy and France, they actually played them very, very, very well.
Especially the France game.
Yeah. And they were tough outs in that one. They got a little, like you said, they had a little bit of luck. a little bit of when they were chasing the games, they've made too many unforced errors
Mm-hmm.
against Wales in Rome to overcome.
Yeah.
And, you saw it later on when the pressure and stuff started to get to them, and they were feeling like this was a game that we were supposed to win.
Mm-hmm.
This was our game to win. We had it, and they got down. And when they were chasing the game, that was when they started making the mistakes, right?
Right.
And they got a good coach. I think that they'll be improving. And that's a team that, at least in the next Rugby World Cup, which comes up in the fall, could be interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
And
absolutely.
I mean, you want to talk about the all-time group of death? Look at the pool that has Ireland, Scotland, and South Africa in it.
Yeah.
3 of the top 5 teams in the world right now,
That's
all
tough.
in the same
Yeah.
pool, because they drew it based on rankings 3
Yeah.
years ago.
Oh, okay.
They have to really resolve that because so much changes.
Mhm.
I don't understand why they couldn't draw that this fall, about a
Right.
year out. And it would
Yeah,
have been
that's odd.
because you've got such a totally unbalanced draw.
Mhm.
You're always likely, with the way the powers are spread out, you're going to get an unbalanced group,
Yeah,
because you have to
especially
beat
with a
France.
tournament that's only been going on for less than 40 years. It's you got to take your bumps in that, and then it's like the game grows before the tournaments grow. You know what I mean? And a lot of these tournaments, so the games get bigger, the players get more, it gets more vast, and then the tournament's struggling to catch up. So you're seeing some tournaments for more niche sports try to get ahead of it and have a tournament that's too, you're bringing in teams that really don't belong there. But you kind of get why they're doing it. Like, I get why the Women's World Cup expanded when they did, even though US are playing Thailand and they win. It's not a kickboxing event. It was, Thailand would more than likely win, but soccer. So it's I understand both sides of it. I'll just put it that way.
And I was talking to a guy this weekend about the possibility of combined teams.
Mm-hmm.
In cricket, because of the way the ICC was founded, the
Mm-hmm.
West Indies as a region
Right.
are a team.
Right.
Now that goes into a whole entire different group of issues where you have islands and countries. Like, to be honest, Guyana's not an island. It's
not.
a
It's
country in South America.
Just
It's not
culturally,
even
it's got a lot of black people. So
yeah. So
yeah.
but they have a representation in it, and you've got all these different entities that have to contribute in one way, shape, or form. But they have at times been able to produce enough athletes to compete on a world stage where an individual island may not.
Could
So
you
I was reading
imagine
an
if there
article
was a
today
Polynesian
where
team?
that was what I was saying, an Asian
So there
Pacific Islands team. And
Whoa.
they are actually going to do that when the British and Irish Lions, which is an all-star team from Ireland and
Okay.
Scotland, Wales, and England, tours. They're going to play a game against a combined 15 from Samoa, Fiji, and those areas.
Well,
If
I
they
would
had
love to
that,
see
and Tonga.
Samoa, Fiji,
Yeah.
Tuvalu. These are, and they just put a team together. Because look, those teams are able to compete at the sevens because it's a smaller game. Could you imagine though that squad? Because you look at every national team in the world, there's a South Pacific Islander on their team.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one. I mean, I'm looking at the French team. I was like, well, that guy's, his name's got a whole lot of vowels. Pretty sure he's from the South Pacific. It's in about 8 syllables. So there's a lot of, Japan's national team. There's about 7 or 8 of them on that team. And Japan is notoriously
England.
closed when it comes to citizenship. So they know their worth.
Mm-hmm. No, and there's a ton of them. And
And US boy, we're like,
teams,
us when it comes to sports. We're like, come on. Look at your citizenship. Come on.
So no, but I think that would be a way to balance it out. And also, what about a combined North American team right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. It's a theory. I understand it. Any country that participates in a confederation for an international sport does not want to give up their independence to
Right.
compete
Right.
separately, because once you give it up, it's
It's
almost impossible to
impossible.
become an independent member again. So
Understood.
if they were to start doing it, if the sport grew enough, it would be almost impossible for them to then split.
Yeah, but
Right.
I see the case for micronations to do that as opposed to,
Mhm.
nations that are on a large established continent. But but look, the West Indies cricket team should never go away. That should just be there to the point where I really think, at least when it comes to international football, they need to consider having a West Indies football team. And I know
Well,
that's been discussed before, but but it will not include Jamaica. Jamaica won't be there, but it'll be the St. Lucia's and the St. Kitts and Nevis's of the world. That's even been discussed to some extent. But Trinidad, Tobago, Jamaica, they're not going to, of course, participate in that like they do in cricket. But as far as rugby is concerned, I think it's something that the smaller island nations of the Pacific should consider, considering the fact that they have their hands in national teams throughout the world. Throughout the world.
mhm. Well, why don't we go ahead and welcome in our resident rugby expert, Celtic Cam. How goes it, buddy?
Listen, my stupid ass talk about. I don't even know that I'm just getting to trying to get. I'm trying, Cam. I'm trying.
No, you guys are doing great. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah, you've got your Scotland gear on. I've got my Ireland gear behind me.
Yeah.
I noticed.
And
I know you did not
my son is
necessarily
big
watch.
into the rugby now too. He's asked every weekend, Daddy, can we watch rugby? So
Oh, that's
it's
awesome.
coming.
It was a great crowd on Saturday. On Sunday. I'm sorry you gentlemen missed it, but Cam, that was one hell of a game, especially the first half. I mean, it's hard to look at a half that ends in the single digits and look and say, okay, well, but it was just an all out battle. I mean, I still can't figure out, nor can anybody else I've talked to figure out why Ireland had that try called back when Scotland used the wrong ball on the line out. I think that they should have been punished because the Scots can't figure out what ball they play with.
Yeah, not great. Not a great look. No. No, that first half, as you say, was it has to be one of the best first halves of rugby I've seen in recent memory. I mean, as you say, 7-8 going into the half, just both teams just battering each other. Just absolutely perfection from both sides. And then unfortunately the second half, Ireland just got that little edge in terms of being able to keep up with stamina and perfection. Scotland started reverting back to the old days of Six Nations and making silly mistakes when they weren't necessary. So, but overall, as you say, I agree. That was a fantastic game of rugby.
How much of it was that Ireland are the established team? They are the number one team in the world. They played like the number one team in the world. Scotland are the chasers at this point. I rate Gregor Townsend. I think that, Scotland has some decent players, maybe not the same amount of them as Ireland does, but how much of those mental unforced errors were just forced by the fact that they were chasing a game that had been in, and they just put that extra little amount of pressure on themselves, and it caused them to make those unfortunate errors that you can't make against the number one team because they will capitalize.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, especially, the first point you made in terms of team depth. I mean, the Ireland squad you're replacing superstars with superstars, when they're making replacements on the field. I mean, it's incredible how deep it goes. I mean, I have to give credit for the Ireland under-20s coaches over the past 5 to 10 years, because they've clearly been doing something right. And they do have a very good youth program in Ireland for rugby. I mean, you're born and you're given a rugby ball, so to say, in Ireland. So, it's something that is just in the water there. But yeah, Scotland, we do have the superstars, Hogg, Jones, Vandermeer. Like we have a good, starting group of guys, but we just don't have the same bench depth, I think, in terms of making replacements that a country like Ireland does, who is just stacked. no scarcity for who they can pick to be on that bench.
And they were also so like they're adaptable. You know, you have what a prop playing hooker because your two hookers go out,
Right.
and yet he's like, well, I've got the two best props in the world behind me, so all I've got to do is not mess up.
Right. Exactly. I just don't have to make a
Use your
mistake. and I'm
guy
good.
that's gonna you have a winner taking lineouts because he's the only guy that can do it, and they execute those to perfection. And the ageless wonder that is Johnny Sexton at 37, still playing at the level that he is.
It's ridiculous. I mean, you know, there have been some of the greats that played quite late into their careers. I mean, Johnny Sexton is still bringing it to every game, though. I mean, he's not just there to coach the players, he's an active part of the game. We saw that on Sunday. I mean, you know, usually when you get into that kind of age group in rugby, you're more there to kind of guide the players and, you know, essentially be a team captain and control the flow of the game. Well, he was really the flow of the game. You know, he was up there making those tackles. He was up there, you know, getting that ball delivered down the ranks, down to the wings, things like that. So I'm still really impressed with Johnny Sexton. I think he is going to go down as one of the greats, especially in Ireland, because as you say, he's 37 and he is still at the top of his game.
And James Lowe, after I thought he couldn't top himself with the one try that he had where he wraps himself around the pole to get it in, does almost the same exact thing. I mean, he's got probably the two best tries of the entire tournament.
Yeah, no, I mean, rugby. Ireland's been doing it with style too, just in much the same way that I think France has been doing it in style, getting their tries. It's been really, really impressive. Yeah, there's not a single thing in this competition I could really say where Ireland really needs to improve. Their forwards and their backs are both looking really strong. They're melding really well together, and it's been an absolute joy watching them. You know, obviously I wish Scotland maybe wasn't sitting in third right now, but as I say, it's been a fantastic competition so far, and I'm kind of upset that it's coming to an end this week. So,
but that's all right. We've got about 9 months until the next one rolls around. And I was telling you, I think you heard me talking instead about the fact, yeah, we have this really great group that includes Ireland, Scotland, and South Africa, which means that somehow one of those three is not moving on to the knockout stages of this kind. So the top team in the world, the defending champions, and oh yeah, by the way, after this tournament, Scotland's probably going to be top 5 in the world too. So you got 3 of the top 5, definitely 3 of the top 10 teams in the world, all playing in the same group. If that isn't an advert for redoing the way that you draw this tournament and not doing it 3 years ahead of time, I don't know what is.
It is pretty ridiculous. I was looking at it the other day. Thankfully, you know, with how we've performed in this Six Nations, Scotland are now ranked 5th, just under South Africa. So, that game, I think I'm really excited for that game. As you say, we've got 3 powerhouses in that group right there. And I think those games are all going to be absolutely fantastic.
It's going to be about game management. It's going to be about power. We saw sort of the power that the Southern Hemisphere teams brought in the last one, especially Stead and Cam in that final where South Africa just absolutely ran over England.
Yeah.
And that was the tournament of Faf de Klerk. I think this one might be the this might be the World Cup if he hasn't already emerged after the last tournament, hasn't already emerged after this tournament. Anybody who doesn't know in the rugby world, who doesn't know who Antoine Dupont is, by the end of the World Cup, you're probably not watching. I mean,
absolutely.
his game on Saturday with the backwards pass and some of the stuff, the one-handed backwards pass and some of the stuff that he was doing. I saw him compared to, you know, the rugby version of Tom Brady, Lionel Messi, and Cristiano Ronaldo all rolled into one.
He's been incredibly impressive. As you say, his releases have been just absolutely on point. You know, that one-handed release that he made, that handoff was just absolutely stunning. I think France has got a golden child there, as you say, and I could definitely see why people have been kind of comparing him to to some of the superstars in other sports, because he's still young. He's still very young, and I think he's got a lot of potential. So
What is he, like 26?
yeah, I think he's 25 or 26. Yeah.
Yeah,
So he's
26.
still
And
senior.
in rugby, so we were just talking about Johnny Sexton playing that scrum half position into his late 30s. Could you imagine what he's going to look like after in about 4 or 5 years?
It's going to be ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, especially if the French team stays with the same quality that is around him. They're going to be competing for that number one
They're
spot.
just so large.
Yeah, large and in charge, man, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, what the prop Uli, I can't remember his name. I think he's one of the 3 or 4 biggest rugby players ever. He goes about 6'8", 350 pounds.
Ooh, not someone you want to mess with. Ooh.
And can move. That's the
And can
scary part.
move.
He can move.
That's the thing. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't outrun him.
Yeah, Uni Antonio. He is, of course, he's Samoan.
Oh, of course.
6'5", 357 pounds. So
Oh.
6'6", 357. He is an absolute house.
Imagine that coming towards you. Oof.
Imagine going towards that.
Imagine having to go towards that.
He got I think he did get a red card in the match against Ireland. And
Yeah,
it
he was
kind
out
of
for 3
wasn't
weeks.
his fault
Right.
because he absolutely just clattered one of the Ireland players, but it wasn't like he was just kind of standing there moving forward and the guy ran into him, but because of his size, he hit him high. It was like you just can't you can't move that.
No. No.
That was ridiculous. Oh,
He's like, I was looking it up. He's like one of the 4 or 5 biggest rugby players in combination of height and weight.
Yeah. You see some of the guys, once they get over about 6'4", 6'5", they usually are around 280 because, bigger than that, you at that height, you really can't move very well. And to see him, though, and the way his lateral movements is what's most impressive.
Mhm.
How he doesn't need to be, just trudging forward or holding firm. You see him, he can step to the side and
Right.
and what I've seen, he's good at making you go, I'm not gonna run that way.
Mhm.
So it's almost like he's 2 guys. Well, he basically is 2 guys. He's 2 of me. I'll put it that way. I'm not a small guy. I'm not.
Well, that's why they're
I go
playing with
about
he
185,
actually
and
is.
he's like 2 of me.
He actually is 2 people.
Yeah. So when he's there, it's like, okay, well, it makes no sense to run over there. He's going to cut the field off, and you see when they do go at him, it's I'm going to take the ball, I'm going to duck, I'm going to put my head down, and I'm going to turn, and I'm placing the ball
Put it down.
and putting it down. There's just no point. It's no point.
And I want to get the ball out of my hands as quickly because the one thing I don't want to happen is for all of that to fall on me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
absolutely.
And we've talked about this before, how you don't see, and you brought it up, that very few rugby players play at above 300 pounds, right?
Right.
Because you get to a point where you're just too bulky
Right.
to move up and down effectively.
Yeah.
And the endurance is
That's
limited.
O-line in American football because
Yeah.
you're not moving that much in that position. You have to be
Well,
quick,
that's
but
why-
you're not running. Yeah.
That's why Jordan Mailata plays football, not rugby.
Right. Because that's the biggest
at
man
his
that's ever lived in the
size,
world.
He just didn't have the muscular endurance to be able to play
Right.
an 80-minute game
Right.
of rugby.
Which is
at that
makes
time.
which
They
makes
said-
Antonio even more of a specimen.
Mhm.
Unbelievable. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
So, I mean, could you imagine that's one of the few players I could say, all right, look, I'm gonna put you in at defensive lineman. You see that guy?
Mhm.
He's the fly half, he's the scrum half. Just go get him.
Yeah.
Fetch.
Yeah.
I don't even need to tell you all. I don't need to tell you swim moves, football techniques. That guy with the ball, just like you used to, go and hit guy with the
tackle him.
ball.
Yep. Go tackle him.
I don't even know if he speaks English. All I need to say is in French, go tackle man with ball.
Tackle a man with the ball. What about the guy in front of me? Dude, seriously?
Just move him.
He's 305, man. Just move him.
Push him to the side.
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing, if he can play the 60, 70 minutes that he plays
Yeah.
in rugby,
Yeah.
to think that he couldn't go sustained in those bursts,
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
40, 50 NFL plays.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
And
son,
no, you're going to get a 10 to 20 minute breather
mhm.
after every series. You're going to get a breather.
Right.
Yeah, he'll probably say, "What's this? Why do I get a vacation?"
If I coach a team, I would go, okay, turn around and see that guy in front of you. Push him that way. Oh, okay.
You see the guy with the
Just push him
ball
that-
on our team? Don't let anybody touch him.
Oh, okay. I can do that. Yeah, there are few people who ever exist like that in this world. Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
And but that's what makes you see the athleticism. And I know that they'll talk about the rugby league games where you're playing with 13 as opposed to 15 being a more athletic game.
Yeah.
And there are times where, you're watching a game like this and it is a war of attrition. It's a battle, but a strategy, the kicking, the stuff like that.
Right.
Right.
But man, when they get it going, it is a thing of beauty to watch.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Phase after phase after phase after
Mhm.
phase is just slowly moving up the field. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was watching, and they get down to that goal line, and I have never seen a tougher yard to get than when you get right down and you're that yard in
Yep.
front of the
Yeah.
try line.
Ask Wales. They know exactly
Yeah.
what that's like. That happened to them.
Ireland
So
had it
this
a couple
tournament,
of
this happened
times
to them
down
so
there.
many times. They get all the way there, man. And
Yeah.
and England against France couldn't get it.
Both Scotland and Wales had it down there and weren't able to get it in.
Yeah.
And so much of the time I've been watching that, and I was like, just that last yard that you need to get that try, and it's right there, and you are 3 feet away.
Yeah.
And you just can't get that 3 feet.
So frustrating. I remember that. It's the most frustrating feeling ever. You're just grounding and pounding for like a good solid 2 minutes nonstop, and then
Just can't get it.
And then something happens and it's a penalty and
Yeah.
it goes the other
you
way.
lose it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Well, I really think, at least in the United States is concerned, if you're an American football fan, if you actually like the players that don't handle the ball, you should turn on a rugby match. You really should.
Because you see all the guys that don't handle the ball normally handling the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were a big
Exactly.
fan of linemen
Yeah.
running a ball,
Which
then
is
you
the
would
greatest
like
thing to
rugby.
see. Yeah, you'll love it. You'll love
If
it.
you wanna
But
see
you
a
know,
fat
my
man run a football, you watch
Yeah.
rugby.
yeah.
And I'm not saying that they're fat, but if you want to
No.
see
But they
big
are. They're
guys-
kind of fat. They got that hard offensive lineman fat. They don't have that
Yeah.
soft, I can't get off the couch fat,
if you ever wanted to see what it would look like if Haloti Nada or Tony
Mhm.
Siragusa had to run a ball,
Yeah.
that's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Haloti Nada would have been a beast rugby player too.
I bet you he was
Absolute
at one point.
beast. Yeah.
I bet you he was. Vita Vea is another one who I bet played rugby at some point.
Yeah. Anybody who's 320 who can do back handsprings and a standing backflip will let you know
Mhm.
about their athleticism at
Yeah.
320.
Yeah.
So, Cam, let's talk a little bit about the other sports in Scotland and turn our attention to the Scottish Premier League. We had a cup break this weekend. Ireland went and beat Hearts. That was an early game on Saturday. Rangers came out winners too.
Mhm.
We're closing in on the split. The top 3 in the table that would qualify for the Champions League and the Europa League look pretty static right now.
Right.
But it's still that battle in to see who's going to stay in the top 6 with a chance to qualify for the Conference League in that second Europa League, possible Europa League place, and who's going to go down and be in the bottom 3 in the relegation zone. So, do we have any more clarity on what we're looking at?
Well, it has kind of opened up a little bit. We're looking at St. Johnston with 31 points and then Livingston with 36. So there's a 5 point gap there between seventh and eighth. However, between seventh, sixth, and fifth, it's 36 Livingston, 37 St. Mirren, and 38 Aberdeen. So Aberdeen have been able to pull themselves up a little bit. They're kind of securing themselves in a little bit better position than they have been, in the past couple of months. But that St. Mirren Livingston, Aberdeen group is not to be ignored. A single game or two between now and the split could really mean, tragedy for one of these teams falling down to that seventh position there. So those three teams I'm going to be keeping an eye on over the next couple of weeks as we get closer to the split, because I think there could be some reshuffling. I would love to see, St. Mirren stay up there. I think they deserve it. Same thing could also be said about Livingston, to be honest, too. They've had another good season, and I think they're just right on the edge of glory, making it into that top six. So those three teams are definitely the ones to watch right now. At the bottom of the table, we're kind of unfortunate. Dundee United doesn't seem to have much hope in them. Tony Watt just has not played off for them. He ended up going over to St. Mirren, I think, in mid-season after he was released, not having kind of shown the way he had past season. So unfortunate for Dundee United, seeing as how they just came back up. But as I say, the middle of the table, there are still some movements possible that can happen.
So going down a league, the story that was last year looks like it will definitely be the reverse this year.
Yeah.
Arbroath and Hamilton, they just don't have it in them.
No, they ran
like
out.
one, or if not both, could be dropping down to the third tier.
Yeah, it's big. I mean, it's crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. From where, I mean, for any listener that was listening to us last season with Arbroath and like the progress that they made as a part-time team, beating teams like Inverness, Caledonia, Thistle, and things like that, who are full-time teams in the Scottish Championship, just absolutely wild. Hamilton is not a stranger to the Scottish Premier League whatsoever. They're often quite up there, and they're potentially going to be falling down to, as you say, below the championship at this point in time. So unfortunate for both teams. I think they just ran out of steam. So
the good news is, though, in the championship, we could actually see games in the league in the Scottish Premiership played at Hampton again, because Queen's Park looked to be like they could be getting promoted.
Yes, yep, absolutely. They've had a really, really good season. It'd be great to see them back up. I think, if I'm not incorrect, I believe they're Scotland's oldest team.
I can't remember whether it's Queen's Park or Queen of the South. That is it. It's one of them. It's like the oldest team.
I'll have to take a look at that again. Now that you say it, I'm not sure which one it is, but either way, Queen's Park have a very long history in Scotland in terms of football. So it'd be great to see them back up, and great to see Hampton open back up again. Granted, probably at slightly lower capacity than people are used to, but.
So I'm looking it up now. I do think they are the oldest team in Scotland. Then I can't remember why Derek Ray was so much in love with Queen of the South. Anyway, though, great to see them back. All right. Anything that we should be looking out for besides the Scotland-Ireland game in the Six Nations? Anything that we should be looking out for this weekend in Scottish football?
Yeah, so we have a classic rivalry matchup between Celtic and Hibs this weekend coming up, which I think should be a good game. Hibs are sitting, I believe they're sitting in fourth right now, so that'll be another good game. Dundee United, St. Mirren have an opportunity here to create a gap for themselves, keep themselves up in that top six. And then Motherwell Rangers should actually be a good game. Motherwell's had a decent season. They're not sitting perfectly right now, obviously, but I think that could be quite a good game as well. So those are the three games I'm really going to be looking at.
All right, buddy. Thanks for coming on and joining us. We'll get you back. I know you love the extended conversation about rugby, but we'll get you back next week. Wrap up the Six Nations and move on with more of the Scottish Premier League. So thanks for once again for telling us all about what's going on in sports in the land of enchantment that is Scotland.
Thank you, my friend. Have a good night, gentlemen.
Good to see you,
All
Cam.
right. So we're going to move on and talk. We're going to bring in three of our favorite correspondents to talk to and have a little bit of a roundtable as we move on, and welcome in our good friend Bayern Rob, Professor Matt, and Chelsea Mike. So, and as I wait for him, Stead, for the first time since 1977, there are no Philadelphia teams in the NCAA tournament, but I do still have a team because for the first time since 1992,
that's right.
Howard made it. I never thought that I would see the day that Howard made an NCAA tournament that Villanova did not.
Yeah, and that's great for Howard too. I mean, I have a long family lineage there, and anytime an HBCU is able to be a 16 seed and get splattered by a top seed, at least it's good to see them competing. I think we can all remember the days when Hampton, as a 15 seed, won, and their coach getting picked up, kicking his legs in the air, which is one of the best post-match celebrations you could say you ever saw in that tournament. But good on Howard. Yeah, I'm sure my cousin and aunt and uncle and dad and grandfather and grandmother and great-grandfather and great-grandmother would be happy for that Howard qualified.
And, the thing that I was most happy about was that they actually made it into, and I know that the NCAA tries to tell me that the games that are happening tonight and tomorrow are actually part of the NCAA tournament. The fact is that they are not.
They're not.
The pigtails are not part of the tournament.
Also, if you don't have to turn in your bracket before those games are played, they're not part of the tournament. Round. Yes, all the bracket pools I'm involved with, my card is due on Thursday. So
yeah, because as far as anybody is concerned, the tournament starts at around noon on Thursday.
Right.
And actually, the local team down here plays the first game.
Mm-hmm.
Maryland will lead off the whole NCAA tournament for the first time in since 1985, I think it was the last time that Maryland led off the 1985. Yeah, the last time that they led off the NCAA tournament with the very first game of the tournament. And gentlemen, you know who they lost to that year?
Villanova,
the eventual national champions.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was just happy that Howard was able to qualify for the first the tournament proper. Yeah, are they probably going to get splattered by Kansas? Yes. Do they get to go out on the same court and play as Kansas? Yes. For 2 hours is a significant portion of the population going to be focused on Howard University and learn all about Burr Gymnasium. And are they going to, on CBS or one of their affiliates, get to show Howard University advertisements that make the campus look a whole lot better than it actually is? And the school look actually technically functional? Yes, and I am happy for it. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Let's turn our attention to some stories that have been developing over the last couple of days. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this roundtable. So we had two really big stories that came across on Monday. We had the release of the lawyer's report that looking into the situation involving the Reynas and Greg Berhalter, right? No great revelations in there as far as what Berhalter said. In fact, the lawyer's report said that, legally he is eligible to be employed, right? He did not do anything illegal. He was not obligated to report the event because there was no police report. He did not lie in the interview process. He did not withhold information. Furthermore, the accounts of he and his wife, along with any witnesses that they were able to interview, all came to the same conclusion that this was how it happened, how they said it happened. There was a disagreement. She slapped him, he pushed her and kicked her. Now, that does not in any way excuse his actions, right? do not under any circumstance put your hands on a woman, right? That just does not happen. That is not excusable. All right. He immediately reported it to his coach, as he was supposed to do, sought the necessary counseling and treatment. They eventually reconciled. They've been married for over 20 years and have 4 children. There is nothing in their account that is inconsistent with the facts that were already in record. What we did get, though, was a lot of accounts that came out unfavorable to the Reyna family. Claudio, who has been praised as, innovator in terms of talent development and team construction from his time in both LA and with Austin FC, is forward thinking. He was thought of as, the captain of the men's national team. There's this great legendary midfielder, kind of a calm, mellow, forward thinking, forward facing guy. Comes out and he's a bully. He's aggressive. I'm not going to mince words on a lowly rated podcast. He's kind of an idiot, because if you're going to say something sexist and misogynistic, please have the common sense not to do it in email where there can be a record.
Absolutely.
All right. I need you to be better than that. So why he was criticizing the use of female refs in a youth game and saying that they're not up to par and that we shouldn't do this, we have to have male refs, was inexcusable. Both he and Danielle tried multiple times to threaten, cajole the various figures that they had access to in the U.S. soccer situation, with their knowledge of what happened in 1992 between Greg and his wife. Danielle going as far as to say, after this tournament's over, I'll make one phone call and an interview, and that'll be the end of him. Right now, this was a friend. This was her roommate. They were best mans at each other's weddings. They vacationed together. That they could be to the point where they would ruin this guy's career and his family over a perceived slight to their son is just inexcusable. And it is all the representation of the pettiness from sports families that we hate, right? So at the end of the day, Greg doesn't look great. And I would say he's not vindicated, because yes, he still did what they said that he did, and that came out at a very unfortunate time. It's the Reynas that come off looking all the worse. So Stead, what did you make of all of this?
The thing that bothers me the most, and it also is reflective of the current political and cultural climate of the United States, is for some reason people are no longer allowed to make mistakes. That is a real problem. It's a real problem. And this is an indictment of the United States. It's an indictment of the country. If you cannot atone in your 40s for something that happened when you were a child, because I don't care what anybody says, 18-year-olds are children. If you can't atone for that, then what is the point? And what the Reynas were trying to do here is use the current culture of the United States to ruin a man who was supposed to be one of their best friends. But that should let Berhalter know very, very clearly now, because I guarantee that there have been questions that they've raised with each other about their relationships in the past. There's no way you can go from being the best of friends to this type of situation without there being some little beefs that have been going on before. So that all has not been right with those two families for quite a while. As a father and as a coach, former coach, because I will never coach again after my experiences with things like this, and I didn't even coach players who were really all that great, I can say that you have done nothing but do your own child a disservice, because now he's going to grow up being a brat, or if he's not, he's going to be perceived as being a brat. So as I said before when we discussed this, Rob, when you and I had our short about this, Rob, when I said that the person who's the real victim here is Greg Berhalter's wife. She's still the only one that's the real victim. And now, as this has progressed, I'm going to include Giovanni Reyna in this picture as well. his Instagram post essentially ended it. That's where this whole thing should have stopped publicly. And it didn't. And it didn't. You have one of the greatest soccer players ever to come out of the United States, who has essentially tarnished his image and his reputation to the point where it's going to be very difficult for him to get a job in soccer, professional soccer, for a little while. It's going to be very, very difficult. But to say that what's sad is that they actually thought they were going to be able to ruin this man's career, and they may very well have, but they didn't ruin his life. And that's what they could have done. That's what they could have done. They could have ruined Greg Berhalter's life, and hopefully they have not. A team will now not be so afraid to hire Greg Berhalter in a role. They won't be so afraid to do it now because he's not the one that comes out of this situation looking like the ire of public opinion. It's going to be the Reynas. And so I'll say, at least to that extent, I am happy that Greg Berhalter is going to be able to somewhat get through this. I still don't think he should be the national team coach. Regardless of what happened, he shouldn't be. But it's, Gio, be quiet. Put your head down. Focus on the game. And let the bad juju that's going to come towards your parents over the next couple of years, that's their problem. You don't have to deal with it, and you shouldn't. Don't answer questions about it in interviews. Ignore it. Make sure your agent is not someone who your parents communicate with regularly, and find some better people to be guiding your career because you're still very, very young. You're still 20 years old. Try to stay healthy. Try to get back on the field at Dortmund and get away from this as quickly as possible. That's my current opinion on it. I mean, because I've worked so long in the world that they come from when it comes to prep schools, and I've retired from that world, but I was in that world for 20 years. I'm trying not to let it affect me because I'm like, I know who those people are. Those are bad people. They're bad people. And the reason why they're bad people is because they will never truly have to experience any real consequences. The Reynas aren't starving. They don't need jobs like the rest of us need jobs. They don't need it. The worst that's going to happen to him is it's going to be hard for him to get a job, and the people may not be so friendly to him at the country club. That's the worst that's going to happen to him. So I am not, I bear sympathy normally for when I see people get really taken to task, but I don't feel bad for them. They brought this on themselves, and they deserve, I know I don't say they deserve, they've earned all the ire that's going to come their way in the future. They've earned it. It's their own fault. And open up mouth, insert foot, and splatter the egg all over your face because that's what you've earned. It's your own fault. And I feel sorry for your children.
All right, Rob, you are one of the people we know that follows the U.S. men's national team and these stories the closest. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this situation as it developed in this report.
Oh man, so I love all of it because I just love the drama, love the
TMZ Rob strikes again.
I love it. So my favorite, I said it in the chat, but one of my favorite lines is, so pretty much there's a bus system for family and friends at the World Cup. And so after the Wales game, Danielle Reyna did not want to go on the bus with the Berhalter family, right? And there's multiple buses, right? But they were together before the Wales game. And when Gio didn't play after the Wales game, they didn't get on the bus, right? She refused to get on the bus, and he was like, the guy who coordinates it was trying to figure out, like, okay, come on, hear her out. And the quote that she said was, "Once the tournament is over, I can make one phone call and give one interview, and his cool sneakers and his bound passes will be gone." I die laughing when I read it. Because, like, first of all, she's aware that Greg loves sneakers. And for all you guys who watch Greg Berhalter on the sideline, to love the Jordans, various dunks. He has an interview on the GQ as well about talking about his shoes and love his shoes and everything. And the famous bounce passes that I love talking about, that we have to give credit to. I have to give shout out to Waki, who does is part of a podcast, USA Soccer Podcast, who was one of the first ones to really go into some Bruder style detail with the passes. And I think it says that she watches these videos, which is kind of hilarious. Number two, the other observation I love seeing is that Claudio Ream was trying to remount US Soccer because at a U17 tournament, Gio, she wanted Gio to fly business class, not coach like all the other kids. So yeah, that was kind of weird.
People.
Then trashing the quality of the rest because they were female and not male. That was yikes moment, considering that your wife is a U.S. women's national team member. I think she won a World Cup as well in the team. So yeah, that was just awful news. So now my favorite part about this is you read the report and then you start to piece together like kind of the timeline or what have you. Pretty much the Berhalters are going. I mean, the Reynas are going after Greg Berhalter here after the Wales game, and it was around this time where Weston McKennie's dad, who is known on Twitter as Airborne69, followed on Twitter, by the way. He took a picture with Greg and on the rooftop and said, "This is the coach." You know, he talked about mentality. So pretty much the rumors about Reyna being a crybaby, about not trying hard, not sprinting, we're all leaking out outside the locker room. And so now like that tweet makes more sense to me. Pretty much like Weston McKennie's dad was like, "No, Greg Berhalter is the coach. I'm 100% behind him," and that's the end of it, pretty much. The Raiders look awful. Claudio, I know he resigned his job with Austin FC. He's still now an advisor, but he should be fired from that role because he's atrocious. I feel bad for Gio. I feel bad for the Berhalters, especially Rosalind. And seems like the Berhalters were very upfront with the investigation.
Mhm.
Even before he put out the statement, they were talking to US Soccer and getting their ducks in a row here. And the Reynas look like children. Because like,
if I can interrupt you real quick, not only was it that they were very upfront in talking, Claudio refused to talk to the investigators.
Yep.
And Danielle's story changed. And then after the report came out, they released a statement through their lawyers that says, well, we were never able to give our side of the story to the investigators. No shit, you wouldn't talk to them.
Yeah. It's just crazy right now. So the latest news is that Anthony Hudson, who's currently the interim coach, who is up for a head coaching job with Oman and Iran, either one of those two. Like I think he's in the contention. He has a choice pretty much. Anthony Hudson went over to talk to Gio in Dortmund, so they chatted, which potentially means he might be getting called up because U.S. men's national team still has no head coach. Along with that, Greg Berhalter is visiting matches in England. He was at Fulham, where they got spanked by Arsenal, I believe. But he was there, so he's traveling around. Yes, Dad, you could cheer Arsenal.
I didn't. Trust me, the way this records, no one saw me actually do that.
Yeah. So it's chaos. I love the chaos because I get giddy at the replies when the report dropped. Like my various discords were up and crazy. And not only from the Dortmund side of things, but also from the US soccer side of things, or just the soccer population in general. Like, are we slowly becoming a soccer country? Maybe we are. I'm not sure, because I feel like people are paying attention. But
it's good to see it. I mean, even though it's a negative story, it's good to see it all over the news feeds.
Yeah, it definitely is. Because it helps us out. Let's be honest, we're very biased here. So, but yeah, no, I know everyone has a take here, and that concludes my take. I hope that we get a roster soon for these upcoming matches against Grenada and El Salvador, so we can talk about the football again. But for today, let the soap opera continue.
Hey, Gio was invited to camp, and he's going.
Oh,
Yes, Gio was invited, and he is going to attend the next U.S. national team camp.
Oh, that's like next week. Oh,
Yep. Mhm.
All right, Coach Matt, how are you feeling about this whole situation?
Professor Matt, not Coach Matt.
Professor Matt.
Professor Matt.
Oh, Professor Matt. Yes.
I'm,
Too many Matts.
I'm kind of not shocked at Rob's take because literally the first thing I have in my notes is, man, I did not realize the U.S. Soccer Federation was some kind of weird ass environment from Shakespeare. You can't make this up. It literally, you cannot make this up. Most of what I feel has already sort of been said. 100% agree with Stead. I think it's profoundly screwed up. I don't think old Greg should be the U.S. men's national team coach, but that's more of a football issue.
100% agree.
Something he did 40 years ago. Right. So I don't understand. The really screwed up thing about this is, like you said, they push the correct buttons in the climate that we're in now, where there's no such thing as a second chance,
Right.
or dare I say, any sense of redemption. The other thing, and you said it, Bayern Rob sort of said it, but I'm maybe I'll frame it a little bit different.
Please do.
I feel sorry for Gio, but Gio is now 20. He's on the men's national team as a full, over 18. He's at Dortmund. You're a man now. You have to make some really important choices. You have to make it now. Parents are toxic. You need to get away from them. If your agent, you brought up his agent, I would not be shocked if his agent is a friend of his parents.
Right, which is scary.
This whole situation, it seems that he has been, which might be his attitude. You taught at prep schools. You've seen these people. I went to a prep school. I wasn't that person, but God knows.
Yeah, and can I just interrupt you really quickly before I come back to you? Let me just preface what I said, where that is a very small percentage of the people who attend those institutions,
Yes.
but there's at least a sizable percentage, I'm talking, around 5 to 10%, that are these people, and they're at every one of these institutions, but they are the vast minority of these institutions, but they're at every single one. Sorry about that. Thank you, Professor Matt.
They are not the majority, but like you said, they're everywhere. And he has to make some really big decisions, because it occurs to me that he's kind of the silver spoon kid. There's a way to break that cycle, but you're going to have to cut some really serious cords. Because I feel sorry for him, but like, you are a man now. You have to, even if it means, putting your parents very much in the rearview mirror, and the structures that they have put in place that may have helped you get this far already. For your
man up.
Yeah, you have to man up.
One of the issues was, and I've heard some conflicting reports, I do want to say, one of the issues that Greg Berhalter brought up was, remember, Reyna was out for about 6 months with a significant injury. He was not playing well. Berhalter was going into these games with a settled rotation that had set itself up in the form of Tim Weah, Christian Pulisic with the striker, and then, bringing on a Brendan Aronson, right? And he did not feel comfortable messing with that. So he explained to Gio ahead of time, like, you're not going to play as much. Now, did he make a mistake not using him? Could he have found more ways to incorporate him? Yes. Should he definitely have not talked about it so soon afterwards at a leadership conference, which tells me that maybe his leadership skills aren't exactly the greatest if you're bringing up this situation, which is not a great example of leadership at a leadership conference. and by the way, the not great example of leadership is talking about a personal locker room situation at a leadership conference. Like that needed to be left in the locker room, right? But it wasn't like Gio was flying high at the time. Number one. Number two, Rob, we can talk about this briefly after we get Mike's opinion on it. But look, Gio's had a chance the last couple of weeks to bust into the Borussia Dortmund side and really nail down a starting position because they have some really significant injuries right now. And he has not been able to do it. In fact, he was dropped for the Schalke game after his previous performance where he was one of the lowest rated outfield players in the Borussia Dortmund side. So despite all of that, this is very much a what have you done for me lately? And when you are the talent factory that, especially with attackers, that Borussia Dortmund is, like, if you can't keep it up, you may be the golden child for the US, but he looks like he may be in a position where he's about to get passed by. So before we move on and talk and go back around on talk some more about this stuff, Mike, what's your take on this?
Yeah. Well, I have a couple things. I think Stead
I've never known you to not have a couple of things.
Give us all to a Mike.
Stead is right here. The victim is Rosalind Berhalter, but I just want to add some nuance to that because what I've not seen in the media once, not at all. I haven't heard it anywhere. This story was not the Reyna's to tell. Victims of abuse should not be outed like this.
100% agree.
And if she was the kind of person who, if they dug it up and they found she had been going through consistent abuse, it's still not the Reyna's story to tell unless she had come to them and asked them for help to get this out there. That is something that you do not do to a victim of abuse. And that is one of the great sins of this that is not being talked about at all.
Yeah.
They did it for their own personal gain. They did it without regard to her state of mind. And what they did could have been absolutely, terrible and devastating to her psychologically long term. And so for that, the Reynas need to be chastised. Secondly, I don't feel bad for Gio at all. The absolute heart of this is his poor attitude. Yes, he was hurt. Yes, he probably wasn't going to play, but he was slacking through practice to the point where he had to be talked to by not just Berhalter, but other members of the United States men's national team staff to be told to pick it up. And, Stead, what you're talking about, because I know those kids too. I didn't go to a prep school. I did go to a Catholic school, but we were pretty cool.
Your school probably didn't charge $20,000 in tuition.
No, yeah, my school only cost like $1,000 a year.
Yeah,
so
see, that's not the schools that they go to now.
Right.
The last school I taught at charges $50,000 a year. So
yeah, no, but I did play on travel soccer teams, and we did have parents like this, and like my mom almost got in a physical fight with them the one time because they were complaining about the fact that I was on the pitch and I was a goalie, and part of my job on the travel team was to improve my foot skills out there on the pitch. And my mom almost got, because this child was going to go to college and be, a star at soccer, which he didn't end up being. So this has been going on.
American college soccer stars.
Yeah.
Especially Mike, you and I aren't the youngest guys in the world, so we all know what college soccer was like back when he was probably going in the 80s and 90s.
But I mean, so I know this type of person, and the type of kid who I played on the team with was like Gio Reyna, spoiled, stuck up. When they weren't getting their way, they moped and they whined. And that's what Gio did here. Yes, no. And what we said, Gio can make up for this now.
Yeah.
But he's got to put his nose down and be the ultimate grinder, because and he needs to show that, or he doesn't get special place on the team because he plays for Dortmund, or
It's more like right to the bench for Dortmund.
Yeah. Or is genetically, comes from two national team players. That's what the Reynas thought. That's why Gio needed all special air travel. Also, why were there pages of this blocked out? Like, some names were concealed, but it was clearly whoever booked travel for the United States men's national team.
I think
You
it's
can't release
to
names
protect
in
sources.
the public report like that. They have to be redacted for privacy issues.
Right. But the person who booked the travel for the United States men's national team is who it was.
All right. And do you know that person right now?
No.
All right.
But someone
We're
does.
still at the same point with that.
But you're protecting them you're trying to protect them from getting retaliation, and now everybody knows who it is who could retaliate. So I mean,
no, I understand what you're saying. We had this survey once at my school, and they asked us to identify ourselves by various demographic traits. And in filling that out, I was like, well, if I fill out 3 of these, they're all going to know it's me, because there's not many traits that you can do that won't signify, at least especially at the institution I was working at. Well, it's like, well, by age, race and sex, pretty obvious who the person was who was saying what it was. So I understand what you mean, Mike. But yeah, you got to black the names out. But yeah, I mean, everybody, it's not that difficult to figure out who that person.
They could have written it differently so that it wasn't very obviously that person.
Right.
But at the same time, that person
legally, though, you still can't do it.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Legally, you still can't do it.
they're-
Yeah. My wife's a lawyer. I mean, yeah, she told me that.
Considering all that we know, though, I mean, I'll say this: can you be protected from the Reynas?
That's
I
true.
do know that
They are willing to go above and beyond in their scumbaggery.
Yeah, you got to remember, this is a Jersey family. Just saying. You know what happened to Jersey.
I'm Jersey through and through, but wow.
Yeah, they
You know what,
look,
though?
they got
I mean,
hits.
they are writing. I love the part where it stopped just short of saying that their actions represented blackmail and extortion.
Yeah.
It's like you got almost to the point where your actions represented something illegal, and we're going to rewrite the rules on parent conduct. I do believe to a certain extent they're going to have to keep a slightly lower profile, because everybody's going to be looking for any time where they do anything like this, and people who they communicate with in that manner are going to feel empowered to release it to Sports Illustrated, to
very
TMZ.
true.
Yeah.
They have put themselves out there in the forefront as the example of bad sports parents, right?
They've also laid themselves out as the example of what everything that's been wrong with American soccer for the last 50 years. They're the reasons why. And they're validating what Jurgen Klinsmann said about the problem in U.S. soccer, when he was the national team coach. Like, the demographics of children that play at a very serious level are these types of people. And even though that's not necessarily true, and you can tell by the representation of the national team that's not necessarily true, that is the stereotype. And all they've done is reinforce that stereotype. And it doesn't matter that Gio Reyna may not be, okay, this may sound maybe not 100% correct, but I've been known to do that on this podcast. Even though he doesn't come from the stereotypical white WASP demographic that we see because his father is from Argentina, it still doesn't change the fact that the behavior is still synonymous with what's wrong with American soccer based on what the standard's been.
And I'm going to stop you there. I don't think it's a racial issue. It's an entitlement.
Okay. Everything is a racial issue when you are discussing things that come with privilege and wealth. Privilege and wealth is synonymous with racial issues in the United States.
Are what made them feel entitled.
Understood. But people who are not white, who come from privilege and wealth, sometimes think that they're not subject to the same scrutiny. And Mike, you know that because we've taught kids who are not white, who do come from privilege and wealth, And they
Mhm.
feel like they are not entitled to the same level of scrutiny as white children are. And that's wrong. That's 100% wrong. So I think we're saying the same thing. I was just trying to come at it from a different angle to say that you can't use that as a buffer for your shithousery that you're doing.
But instead, I completely, I agree with you on the point that it's soccer in the United States is viewed by many as a wussy sport.
Absolutely.
And let me tell you, I got a lot of concussions.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But when the pretty boy prima donnas are the ones who are in the news or who are the stars of the team, that just reinforces it, and it keeps kids away from playing soccer who otherwise might. If you look, there's places where they value toughness in athletes. You don't see them producing a lot of soccer players, and they should be.
Right.
And
Professor Matt, jump in.
Yes, and sort of like going sort of full circle to the point I was making about Geo and the point that you were making. It's the privilege that then is reflected in this attitude, which is really the problem. There is this assumption that just because I am the spawn of Reyna, because I happen to get employed at Dortmund, because I've been bigged up as this, and apparently because my mom is a freaking internet terrorist, I should be starting for the U.S. men's team. And that's sort of the point I was getting at. Gio, you can break this cycle. It's just going to require work.
Yeah.
It's just going to require work.
Yeah. You need some courage.
I think, right now, I think in his professional career, I think he's starting to learn that, where, he's dealing with managers, he's dealing with players, he's dealing with coaches, he's dealing with the situation over at Borussia Dortmund, where you can, my dad was the former captain of the national team, and my mom played on the U.S. women's team, and I'm this and I'm that, and those players will look at him and say, okay, and so what? The coach is looking at him and saying, and so what? I think there was a little bit of pouty 19, 20-year-old child in him who was loafing through and saying, why give the effort if I'm not going to play? And I hope that he recognized it. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, gentlemen, that, it becomes a story of whether or not he can break this cycle.
Yeah. And
the fact that, again, the Reyna's proved everything that we have feared about U.S. soccer and its development, all the issues, and now in a public manner, that's once again being laid out bare for everybody worldwide to see. The one good thing, if there is any good thing that has come across this, is I have yet to hear anybody necessarily jump to the Reyna's defense.
Yeah, agreed.
There's nobody that I have listened to who has any knowledge, either expert or passing, who's been like, you know what, they were right. That they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They were just protecting their son's best interests. But everybody has said, no, y'all were wrong. You were bad people. You were wrong. And so hopefully there's something in there that learns the lesson. My grandfather used to tell me all the time, he said, you're going to pay for your education one way. You're either going to pay for it in money, or you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay the butt price. And sometimes the butt price is a whole lot more expensive than paying for it in money. We watched somebody weaponize a situation to try and take down another family and ruin somebody's career over something. And not only have they ruined their own reputation, but if that friendship meant anything to them over the course of the last 30 years, they have absolutely ruined that as well.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to see too. Not really interested, but something that kind of crossed my mind was like, let's not forget that the Reyna has also lost a child, and that comes with its. Having lost a sister and seeing what my father went through, it does cause one to make some decisions that may not be of the best interest of your other children. But I'm also going to say this too. There's no excuse for this behavior. There just isn't. And no matter tragedy that you've gone through, I think the best point that was brought up here was one that you brought up, Chelsea, Mike, was the fact that they basically outed, your trauma is not one that you could use to inflict trauma on somebody else. And, I hadn't thought about the situation with Mrs. Berhalter and the way that you brought up, Chelsea, Mike. And I think that's probably, if anything doesn't if everything gets lost in the shuffle here that we've discussed, I hope that's the one thing that doesn't, was the point that you brought up, because that really kind of took me aback, me going, yeah, because I have said that she's the main victim here, but I didn't express it, and nor did I think about it in the context that you brought up. So I just want to say that that's probably been the best point made about this whole thing.
I know, in the discussion of anything, anytime we see victims of abuse, even if they are coming forward themselves, you just never hear that being said, and it needs to be said wider on a louder basis, so we as a society can get better.
I can't imagine the trauma of losing a child, but I will say this to the end, there is absolutely no excuse for that behavior, even if you say you're protecting your other children. This is a complete different context, and there's no excuse for that behavior. And I'm hoping the Reynas make the right decision and just sort of go away for a while. But we've all seen people who are in the media, who are involved in media, will find something like this to use as justification for their negative behavior.
Well, hopefully
Which is
you're
sad.
right. I trust that they may have been shocked enough. I will disagree a little bit with you when you said that they were protecting a child. That's not protecting a child. That's coddling a child.
That was their perceived protection of a child.
Yeah,
that's
but
what
that
I was
was not
saying.
what they were
I was not.
actually-
I mean, protection of the word. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct, but that's what they thought they were doing.
But
And it's just, I know the point that you made before, Stead, was valid, that something had to be further behind this than just, but they started flapping their mouth because he didn't play in one game.
You're right.
One game.
He didn't play in a soccer game.
One, not even a whole tournament, just one game.
Right. And I think, the thing about it is, like, if they didn't say a word, like, pretty much what happened was, the team, the leadership kind of reamed him out, and he apologized for it. He's like, you know what? My bad.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing. They didn't. And go ahead, Rob. I don't want to cut you off. I'm sorry.
I know. And then, like, that would be the end of it, because you gotta remember, Giovanni Reyna played a whole half against the Netherlands in the knockout rounds.
Yeah, and so, but this goes to what you were saying, Matt, about how he needed to had they let him use his response on Instagram as the end of it, he would be perceived as doing what you said he needs to do, Matt. That would have been the perception. They would have been like, dude, this kid, he grew up a little bit here. All right, yeah, you take your lumps. That was my bad. I owned it. Childish mistake. I'm ready to move forward. I love the team. My teammates held me down. Blah, blah, blah. He would have looked golden. Because we love that stuff. Yeah. We love that. He would have looked golden.
But I also want to interject, and then I want to move on. Remember, his response wasn't all that.
But it was something. It was better.
His response was also, at the end of it, was, but I did not think that it would be aired in such a public manner. Now, at what point and he shot at Greg Berhalter for airing in the public. The one thing that I will say, I do not think that Greg should have talked about that situation, but he did not name names. He did not name names.
But I think though.
But
I think we need to understand. I know we got to move on. But Gio had more control than he thinks he did. Gio had more control.
And remember what Rob told us at the time. The Atlantic was about to put that article. Grant Wall died, so they pushed it back. Berhalter says what he says, And that is confirmation for them to run that article. Right?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. But the thing is that the investigation was started even before Greg Berhalter opened up his Twitter account and put out a statement. Like this whole thing started. This investigation started at the beginning of the
it was
tournament.
Just he confirmed what the Atlantic
had
already written the article, and then the minute that came out, they published it. That's how Reyna's name gets into the news. Greg Berhalter never put him out there like that publicly, like he thinks he did. It was the Atlantic that did that, because they had the Athletic, I'm sorry, that had that article printed, right? He fires a shot at the coach. You did this, you did this, you did this. No, he didn't do that. The Athletic did that. So, all right, gentlemen.
But still, Gio could have put a bun on that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
He and they could have.
I'm not excusing Berhalter at all. I'm just saying Gio actually had a lot of control of that situation.
He did, and if he had put a bow on it and said, yeah, my bad, this happened, that would have been fine. If the Reynas had never responded and said, we can't believe that he would do this, and then go out and talk about, well, I can't believe he's disciplining my child like that when he did this in the past, and have bad information because what she said turned out not to be true anyway, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we'll see what goes on. Let's turn our attention to something that's a little
to
bit
be continued,
dramatic, if you will. Gentlemen, there is a principle in economics that was set forth in about 1776 by a guy by the name of Adam Smith when he was writing The Wealth of Nations, that talks about the guiding hand of economics. And if I may paraphrase, when left to their own devices, people will arrive to the right decision as if led by a guiding hand, even if they are for the wrong motives. If there was ever an example of that, we saw it today when FIFA arrived at the right decision for the format of the expanded World Cup, even if their motive was to reach their financial goals of making $9 billion. By that, I mean, they came to the conclusion, having posited the idea of doing 16 three-team groups in the 48 World Cup, of which the top two in each group would expand, but then there was going to be they were afraid of collusion, but then in order to prevent that, they were going to do away with ties, and we were going to go straight to the penalties, and this became this whole entire convoluted thing, when we all know the simplest way to handle this was to go with 12 14 groups and pick out the top two in each group plus the 8 lucky losers go on. So that was what FIFA voted to do today. Now, what that will do is add approximately 40 games to the World Cup instead of the 64 games that we had in this year, and in the previous iterations of the World Cup will be up to 104. Now, even with the expanded group stage, we were looking at 80, so we're going to get about 24 more games. What FIFA did commit to was making sure that the tournament would be scheduled within the same 56-day window that they allowed for in 2014, 2018, and a little bit less in 2022. This World Cup was the quickest in terms of number of days that we've seen in a long time, where it took place. Normally we're at about 33 to 37. This one was only 29 days, but it does give us a guide for how they're going to handle this, right? If you want to get a group stage done in a similar amount of days without adding more days to the tournament, the simple solution is just play 4 games in a day instead of 3, like they had in 2014 and 2018, right? And I think I want to go back as far as 2010. They did it
in Qatar as well. They played 4 matches in a day.
No, but the previous 3 World Cups, they had played 3 group stage games a day.
Yeah, but they would do 4 matches in a day, but that was only on day 3 of the group stage. That's
Yeah.
when you would see it, but you wouldn't
So
see it on day
now,
1 or day 2.
because all the
Match
final
day 1,
group
match day
stage
2.
games had to be played at the last time, at the
Right.
same time.
Simultaneous.
Right. Now we're
Right.
going to see, whereas if you can go all the way back to 2006, they were actually at that time still playing 2 games, and they had 2 windows in Germany, and they were playing 2 games per window, which is not something that they've done ever since then, right? So we can do that. So basically the idea is they stumbled upon the right solution, which is the simple solution. Just do that. It makes the most sense. And came up with this idea. So we will get more, they will get more money. We will get more games. They will get their round of 32. The group stage, which is still going to be watched, still going to be enjoyed. We will still go out and see it. You know, people are still going to travel to see it because it is the only time that you can be guaranteed to see your team play. There's still going to be a lot of interest in that. It's not going to be as important, we know, because you are sending a exponentially different number of teams. Yeah, you're only sending you're sending 16 teams home, but whereas previous to this, 16 teams represented 50% of the field, it's a lot less now. Right? We're dealing with about, what is it, about 33% of the field, as opposed to 50% is going home after the first knockout stage. So the chances of you making the knockout stages have increased by about 50%, right? They'll get more knockout stage games, which are compelling. Those are the ones that people watch. Those are when stadiums, when bars, when restaurants, when viewership, when everything stops. They get more of that. They get teams that we will get some more teams that we haven't been able to see consistently in World Cups, have access to it. Man, this might be a win-win situation. So, Stead, how did you feel about this coming out today?
Yeah, I mean, I was relatively pleased, just considering the fact that the 3-team group wasn't going to be a situation. I don't know. I just had a real issue with a marginal country qualifying and they play 2 games and go home. Or you had a team that was actually had a strong qualification run. They get in, they get a bad loss, or they get like a 1-0 loss and a draw, and then all of a sudden they're out. When it's like, okay, giving them that 3rd game, maybe give them a chance to get a 4th or 5th point, that's all suddenly gone. At least from that perspective, I was pleased to see that. Give teams 3 games to actually play. And then also, they're going to have to add more venues. The normal venues that you've seen currently under for at least for 2026, that's going to increase somewhat. So you may see 2 or 3 more spots, maybe one more game and 2 more games in Mexico, or a couple more games in Canada. That's positive. And I also think you're going to see
you'll get more games, of course. I don't know, though, that they can now at this point increase the number of venues.
It's a possibility.
Played at venue.
They're talking about increasing the number of possible venues played. It's in the cards. They haven't decided yet, and I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen, but it is in the cards. And and what's the last quick point I'm going to make, that I think I threw this in the chat line, is how this is going to change the bidding process. I mean, I really think the United States is the only country that's capable of hosting a tournament of this magnitude. I think they're the only one, just from the number of people that are going to be coming in to watch games. And I think that you're going to see, I think somebody put in the chat like an Iberian Peninsula one, but also that includes Morocco. So you're seeing an intercontinental. That was you, Mike. Yeah, you're seeing an intercontinental tournament. That'd be really cool. Or seeing, if you want to go to the South Pacific, you can include Australia, New Zealand, and maybe throw in Indonesia in there. They actually have a soccer culture in Indonesia. So I think the bidding process is going to be a bit more, it's going to be a bit more challenging, I'd say, but also you're going to see a lot more cooperation amongst countries. Is that going to lead to an increase of corruption? I mean, I don't know. Is it possible for FIFA to be more corrupt than they currently are? I mean, Who really knows? But at least from that perspective, I mean, that's kind of what I took from it today. I think I'm just glad that they're still keeping the 3-team format, the 3-match format and the 4-team group stages. That I'm happy to see that.
Before the one thing on the bidding process, you are correct that like all the bids that are coming in for the potentially for the 2030 World Cup are joint bids. There is a combined, the ones that are most public right now, the Iberian Peninsula and Morocco. So that's Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, which again would be across 2 continents and 2 federations. There is the South American bid, which is Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, and Paraguay. Also very interesting, 4 countries in South America. The one that I do not love, because it's a case of somebody trying to circumvent rules, number one. Number two, geographically, it makes no sense to me. And 3, it would require us to do again something that we know is a bad idea and do another Winter World Cup, is the supposed Greece, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt bid, which makes
That's 3
zero.
continents.
3 continents, 3 federations. Saudi Arabia, because Asia had the last World Cup, should not be eligible to bid until after the 2034 World Cup, but they're throwing their lot in with Africa and Europe. They're hoping that they can circumvent the rules. They're willing to fund the bid for all 3 of the countries in order to get it. So it would be a Saudi Arabian led World Cup. It's a case of, we saw what Qatar got out of this and we want the same, but we don't really want to wait the length of time that we're supposed to get it. It makes no sense to me geographically. Given the temperature, like, look, Greece ain't the coolest place in the summer. It's pretty hot.
It's pretty
I've
hot
been there.
in the summer. I've been there in the
been
summer
there
too.
in July, and it's pretty intensely warm.
Yeah.
But Egypt and Saudi Arabia, so we're going to have to do another winter one, which is not fun. And if you're going to do that for Asia and Africa and stuff like that, it would preclude that one that you talked about, where you could have an Australia, New Zealand, maybe some of the Asian Pacific Islands World Cup, which I think would be good. Now, the issue with that one is people don't remember it actually gets cold in New Zealand and Australia in July and August. I mean, like, really cold.
Well, remember with the Olympics that they had in Sydney in 2000, they had to push it all the way back to late September. Yeah. And Kathy Freeman had the full bodysuit on. She was out there freezing when she went.
I mean, we're talking some of the temperatures, and that's like spring, right?
Early spring.
And I also don't. I was looking at this over the weekend just because people don't realize how big Australia actually is. Like, coast to coast, it's about the size of the US.
Yeah. Perth,
but
I think Sydney to Perth is a 3-day train ride.
Or more than that. I mean, Melbourne to Sydney is like a 2-hour flight. Right? And they look on the map like they're very, very close. Right? If you're going from the east to the west coast of Australia, that's a 4 or 5 hour plane flight. Right? And unlike the US, where we have games being played in the interior of the country, everything in an Australian and New Zealand World Cup would have to be played on the coasts. But yeah, that's just a little bit about it. But I do agree with you, keeping the 14 format, and we can talk about. I did a little looking into the teams that will qualify if we expanded them. And, just hypothetically, like right now, given the qualification which for CONCACAF, which is going to be all convoluted because the US, Mexico, and Canada aren't in it, and they reformatted it, and so it involves like 9 group stages and an uneven round robin tournament, because leave it to CONCACAF to come up with a completely convoluted system to do something simple.
Yeah, I
like
mean,
find 3 teams.
I think the verb CONCACAF means to take something very easy and make it very difficult.
Yes. So, but if you had to pick the 3 top teams right now, according to the FIFA rankings, and the eye test kind of bears that out, you'd be looking at Costa Rica, a team that has been there before and we are familiar with. Panama, a team that kept the US out and we're familiar with, and a team that we have said really legitimately deserves a shot to get to a World Cup at one point, in Jamaica, right? Instead, who's just barely on the outside of that looking in? Haiti.
I knew it. I was like, give me a second, I'll get it. Yeah, absolutely.
And this all could change come the Gold Cup, but you and I talked last Gold Cup in 2021 about just how good Haiti looked, how challenging they could be, right? And so in that respect, when we're talking about minnow teams that have a chance to get there from a confederation like CONCACAF, which are looked at as the minnows of the world, would we send a team potentially to a 48-team World Cup that we would be embarrassed that showed up? Right. Looking at the teams just again in the top rankings of the 9 that would get in there from CAF, you have all the usual suspects, and one that I'd be really interested to see, because that 9th team is Mali.
Who they're getting a lot more of their players are playing in UEFA. They've shown that they can be a problem when, at least with qualification for not just the World Cup, but for the Cup of Nations. So I think the continent that needed this change to happen the most is CAF.
And they got the most additional bids out of anybody,
as they should have. But I still think that they have a lot to prove, considering that Morocco did semifinal and Ghana blew their shot worse than anybody I've ever seen a decade ago. But it happens. I mean, it's just what happens. So it's.
But my general point is, right now, when we're looking at the federations, even in Asia, if you look at the teams that would be favored out of there, there's nobody in there that would be a complete and total shock.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. I think that is the worst problem for CAF than probably anybody else. Because as Matt, I would like you to jump in and talk about this. We've discussed this. Like, Uzbekistan has been that team that just can't get in. So jump in, Matt. I'd love to get your take on that.
It's funny.
Mike, that's a very good question to pose.
Mike's going through the sort of math, and that's immediately where my mind went.
Yeah,
I heard this news. Who potentially benefits? Who are these other teams that we could be seeing in these tournaments? And I think it's very, very interesting. And we've talked a little bit about Mali and Africa, and the midfield's intriguing, but in Asia, once you get past the usual suspects, you're dealing with some interesting teams that they're not bad. It's just unless you've watched the Asian Cup, are sort of unknowns, like Uzbekistan, like some of the teams in Southeast Asia that do have footballing cultures and are starting to slowly get better and better. Or every now and again, randomly North Korea shows up. Which is always fun, because it's like, who are these people?
Right.
But that was what I was seeing, was like the teams that you would expect to be the favorites. And I went through every confederation, And there was nobody who jumped out at me I could say, like, when we were doing a preview, we'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is just ridiculous.
No,
And it's either countries that have been there and not been for a while, or of the first timers. Like, I'm really actually interested to see. They may not win a game. They may not score a goal, but I'm interested to see how they actually do when they show up. Like Uzbekistan, for me, Jamaica, seeing them, because with Andre Blake, I believe, he deserves an opportunity to play in an international tournament. And I've been saying, I think one of the biggest issues that Jamaica has faced is they always get screwed in CONCACAF World Cup qualifying because their coefficient is low, because they just don't play enough competitive games, right?
I have a question though in relation to the African qualifying. Because of the expanded field, are they changing the Fugazi qualification?
Yeah, I don't
They
know. That's a
have
good question. They
not,
have
and
to though.
I did look into this. They have yet to release what their actual plan is.
Okay.
Whereas UEFA and CONCACAF, CONMEBOL, all of them have basically said what their qualifying format is going to be. CAF has said they expect it to start in sometime in 2023. Well, we're in or 2023, 2024. We're there. I would figure we're almost through the first quarter of 2023. Depending on how you want to set this up, you may start to have to start scheduling those games. Now they're still doing Cup of Nations qualifying.
Yeah.
But they have yet to say what that format would be. And they have 9 spots and 52 federations. I think we would all like them to get rid of that. There's not a person on this show that I've talked to who's in favor of how CAF does qualifying for the World Cup.
Yeah.
Come up with some situation that would get the best 9 teams in, just not 9 teams.
Yeah.
Because if you go through it and you look at, like, who are their top 9 teams right now, Morocco, Senegal, Nigeria.
Yeah. Egypt.
Now, with Nigeria being third in that federation, were they at the World Cup?
No.
No, because they were screwed in a group thing. Ghana was actually way down on the list, but they made it because of the group thing. Right? But Algeria, Tunisia, none of these names surprise me. And then you get down to the list at Cote d'Ivoire and Mali.
Yeah, and Cameroon
are like 8 and 9.
Right.
Right. And then you got Ghana at like 12. Right now, but none of those names would surprise me to see in a World Cup. And I think each and every one of them would be like, the larger point I'm saying is, we talk about, oh, well, there's teams that don't deserve to be there. And that, I can't believe that they're going to be there. This is not the Euros.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the Euros. I'm sorry about that. Yes, Europe's going to get 16 teams. There may be a team or two from Europe who I'm going to be like, okay, I'm not 100% sure of that. But what if that team is Scotland?
Yeah.
What if that team is Northern Ireland?
Or, well, North Macedonia. Didn't they get in the last one?
Yeah, North Macedonia got it.
They
but
got
right
in.
now, you know what that team would be? Romania.
Right.
Yeah.
But who would be mad about Romania? I mean, anybody who's seen soccer for more than a few decades, who'd be really mad about Romania being there? I mean,
we just had.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, Georgi Hagi was a fantastic player.
And Portrescu, yeah.
Yeah, Portrescu, absolutely.
Matt, you've done a lot with that, but the point again, it would be like, I've been watching soccer long enough to know that there was a point in time where Romania was very good at it.
Right.
We just haven't seen them in a couple of decades.
Right.
Yeah.
We also.
Or what about Hungary? They were good back in the
Colombia
50s.
Yeah.
If we're talking about
Slide.
if we're talking about South America, where it gets the most dicey, because now you got 6 and a third team's out. So basically 6 teams qualifying straight and the 7th team going to an intercontinental playoff, but there's only 10 teams.
Exactly. Pretty soon South America is just not even gonna have to qualify anymore. They're just gonna just send them all. Whatever country is not in some sort of internal conflict
yes,
can go.
Rob is happy because Peru makes it automatically, but we're looking at
and Coach Matt would be happy too because Bolivia would make it.
Yeah, Bolivia might make it.
Yeah,
but then
I
you
think
got
like
this
who
Chilean
would make
team
it?
where I think even the Chileans would be like,
Yeah.
right now, I don't think we really deserve to go.
But outside of Venezuela, who would just consistently not go? Because Venezuelans, I mean, they're just too good at baseball. They're really good at baseball.
Dutch-speaking country. What's it? Suriname?
They're CONCACAF
Suriname
though.
doesn't
They're
compete
CONCACAF.
in South
Yeah,
Africa.
they're CONCACAF.
They compete in CONCACAF.
Yeah.
And by the way, Suriname is trying to get their act together. As far as the federation goes, they've been really working hard on getting like a lot of Dutch international players as well.
Yeah.
Because look, the Netherlands has a bunch of players who in theory could have been eligible for Suriname.
Back in like 10, 20 years ago too.
Yeah.
Imagine how good that team could have been in the 90s,
Yeah.
Suriname. I mean,
Yeah.
they would have, I mean, Edgar Davids, you had Ruud Gullit, you had Patrick Rijkaard, you had Patrick Kluivert, you had just a litany of players that
Yeah.
were all of Surinamese descent, whose families, of course, moved back to the Netherlands after Surinamese independence. That team would have been ridiculously good.
Yeah, they would. So they're working on it. They're working on trying to figure that out again
But
to get it going.
also the other thing that we haven't talked about is I'm not 100% sure
Frank
the
Rijkaard.
difference in
sorry,
between
I'm saying
teams
wrong.
that are actually eligible to play in the World Cup versus teams that compete in continental tournaments.
Yeah, like French Guiana is not eligible to compete in the World Cup. I mean, they're French citizens. I mean, same with I'm pretty sure like Martinique and Guadeloupe. I don't think they're
Yeah,
eligible
but
to
that's
compete in
the
World
thing,
Cups either.
Martinique and Martinique, I believe, is going to be able to compete.
But Guadeloupe is it?
I didn't see Guadeloupe in the list.
Huh. I always wondered about that too, because they're all French citizens.
They're all French citizens, but like Martinique was listed in amongst the 32 teams that are qualifying for, I believe I saw Martinique listed amongst the 32 teams, the British Virgin Islands and the US Virgin Islands.
I know US Virgin Islands, which is I'm like, okay.
And Puerto Rico.
I got family from there, but man, no.
Here's the thing that I love. Montserrat, which is basically an uninhabited island at this point, it's just a volcanic eruption,
Right.
is going to be qualifying for CONCACAF qualification to the World Cup.
All right. I'll give somebody $1 if they will follow those micronations qualification process in CONCACAF. Let's do a short on that. Who's with me? Who's with me?
Look, I am a football sicko, so I probably would. And look, and if I had more vacation days, I probably would go to a qualifying game. I really would. I went to an Aruban League football match, a Reuben League. All right, like it was a doubleheader. The ticket was $5.
I've been to Aruba. I don't recall seeing a stadium. I drove across the whole island. It took an hour and a half.
The stadium is about 20 minutes away from leads to Hilton. And it had the FIFA flag flying, so it's a FIFA stadium.
Is this though, Matt, Rob? If you can make it to a Montserrat home qualifier, let me know because I want to know where they're actually playing the games because nobody has lived on Montserrat in well over a decade. They're all flew back to Britain after the volcano erupted. There's like 40 people on the entire island who refuse to leave. Most of it is like considered a disaster area.
That's too good.
There. It's like living in Chernobyl.
So they actually have a home stadium. It's called Blake's Estate Stadium.
Yeah, they have a current population of 5,000 and 60% of the island is in the exclusion zone.
Yeah, like where are they playing these games?
Look, are you challenging me to go to a crazy CONCACAF World Cup qualifying game? Because I just might do it.
Want to. I can.
Rob went to 3 World Cup games in one day in Qatar. I'm pretty sure Rob could do it.
No, because it has nothing to do with I don't want to challenge Rob to do it. I don't want to have to deal with his wife when he goes home and tells his wife, might challenge me to fly down to a country, 60% of which is in an exclusion zone to watch a soccer game. there's a better
this
than
up, man.
average chance that I'm going to inhale carcinogenic air and I may come back with cancer, tuberculosis, the plague, and gonorrhea that I caught by contact with a watermelon.
So real quick, by the way, the first round starts on March 18, 2024.
I'm just saying, like,
so yeah, let's go. I'm down. I'm down to do something crazy.
I'm about to change my life, man. Keep me posted. Well, stop in Atlanta and pick me up, man.
Oh, you know what? Look,
okay, if y'all clowns do that, let me make a disclaimer. At no point did Mike, the host of the Too Many Guys Soccer Show, actually encourage these fools to try and travel to Montserrat to watch a soccer game.
Well, here's the thing. Well, Mike, here's the thing. We could take the wives with us.
The island is uninhabited. It's like Gilligan.
No. We could, well, maybe not Montserrat, but maybe like one of the other like smaller nations. We could take the wives with us.
We can go to Bonaire versus Curacao. Let's do that.
Oh my God, Bonaire versus Curacao would be great.
I'm talking about the island blew up.
All right, wrap this up. Seriously, I gotta go to
Why
bed.
am I sending you on? I'm not sending you on vacation, dude.
Oh, man.
You want hazardous duty pay? Go earn it. All right, gentlemen, this was too much fun. I love you to death. We had a great show tonight. Started off talking a lot about the way to start a soccer show is to talk about rugby. Got to talk a little bit of Six Nations with Cam and learn about the Haps in the Land of Enchantment. Great roundtable with Bayern Rob, Mike, and Professor Matt going over the U.S. men's soccer team situation involving Greg Berhalter and Giovanni in the Reyna family. You know, getting our thoughts together on this new expanded World Cup. That one got away a little bit. I don't know how we were talking about the virtues of a 14 group, and then it somehow ended up with Stead and Bayern Rob taking a trip to Montserrat to watch a home qualifier. Somebody's going to have to figure that one out for me. But anyway, gentlemen, it's been a lot of fun. We did all right this week. We'll try and do better next week.